or at least trying to. And just as soon as that's done doing its connection, I'm going to do a screen share so that if you are, of the folks that are there, I see a lot of people that are, there we go. Hey. Okay, we're just going to take that and go live. Oh. All right, so while that's doing that, I'm going to do a screen share. Okay, so now you should see my desktop. I'm going to launch that guy. Here is something that you're all going to want. That's the link necessary for the payroll protection program. And then you can actually download that PDF, which looks like this. And so here's where you're going to need from your payroll provider, whether it's TruPayroll or another company. You're going to need to get that average monthly payroll, and depending on, again, what your bank is telling you as to what period of time, beginning and end, that's going to determine that range. We're going to put that on Do Not Disturb. Sorry, folks. All right, sorry about that. And we're going to shut that off. And then, as you can see, the application is only 4 pages, and it's actually only that one page, and then the rest of this is some of the certifications where you're going to sign it. This is all going to go through your bank when you're done filling out this application. And I just heard Jim make it back. 1 second, everybody. How you doing, Jim? Okay, great. And then we're going to go ahead and get started. One of the other things to keep in mind too is here's another website for the, if you just do a search on SBA Disaster Loan Assistance, we're going to be talking about this one. And there we go. There is Mr. Jim. Howdy, Jim. How you doing?
Hey, Al, what's happening?
All right. We let's just dive in here real quick. Over the course of the last couple of days, we've been fielding lots and lots of phone calls, and why don't we start real quick with what the $1,200, as you were starting to tell me a little bit more about that earlier today, what's going on with the actual stimulus money that's coming into individuals?
Okay, so that will apply to anyone. It was part of the phase 2 package, and the way that will work is it is based on adjusted gross income. So if you're $75,000 or less, you will get $1,200 automatically. Between $75,000 and $99,000, which is the phase out, you basically lose $5 for every $100 over $75,000 in income for a single person, $150,000 in if you're married filing jointly. At that mark, at the $99,000 mark, you'll phase out and you'll get nothing. Additionally, if there are dependents on your return, you'll get $500 for each one of those people. One of the issues that they were having is there are some individuals, senior citizens and that, who have potentially do not have a tax filing requirement because they collect Social Security and their other income is not enough, or they have no other income. The Treasury's position was, up until this morning, was that they would have to file at least an informational return to in order to get the stimulus. They reversed course on that, and apparently now they are going to do something with the Social Security Administration as far as finding out who has received Social Security or disability things, and they will also qualify as well. If you have direct deposit information on file with the IRS from 2018, or if you filed your 2019 return, they will do direct deposit. I'm not exactly certain how the mailing procedure will work out yet, or if there's a mechanism within the IRS to even update your electronic filing information. And unfortunately, about 90% of the IRS is non-functioning, either with people working from home or things just shut down.
So does anybody actually have to physically do any applications? This is pretty much just going to be automatic based on.
This is going to be automatic. Yeah, there's no application. If you, the only thing to recommend people, if whether you're single or whether you're married, if for some reason you are over that threshold of 75,000, I believe it's 75,000 for individuals, 150,000 for married filing jointly, and I think head of household, don't quote me on the number, but I want to say it's 112,500. If your income was over that in 18, and you're pretty certain it's not going to be over that in 19, then you're going to want to go ahead and get your tax return filed for 19. Hopefully that they can process that return and utilize those numbers rather than phasing you out.
What is the time frame for when those checks are actually going to start being issued?
The initial thing is that they were for the data passage. The Treasury Department wanted them going out within 3 weeks. That would put them right at about the 3-week mark. Now, I have not heard any follow-up as to whether they're on pace for that or if they are. If they're still behind. I would imagine, as with other parts of this bill, things don't appear to be running as smoothly as they had hoped that they would. So I would not be surprised to find out that they're not exactly ready to go. It's the government antiquated systems, which are not up to a date as they should be. So, but we can definitely take a look and post something later for people, for my clients and yours, and just in general. We're going to try and put stuff on our websites. Even if people aren't our clients, we'll direct them there, and they can at least get some information. And obviously, we're always willing to schedule time to discuss with anybody. I think I said this yesterday. Al and I both use Acuity scheduling, so there is a function. I think Al posted a link. You may be able to do it again today. That would allow you to schedule time with either one of us if there's something that we can help you with.
Right, and please be aware that if you're trying to get a hold of either any of your tax professionals or anybody that would be dealing with this issue right now, everybody is very flooded with phone calls, emails, and text messages. So just bear in mind that we're all dealing with this as best as we can and is getting back to everybody as fast as we can.
Yeah, I'll just follow up with that. I think between Al and I and just our conversations that we've had, we have probably fielded between emails and phone calls probably at least 100 of them on various things. And I just want to remind people that the rules are not necessarily what was passed in the bill. A lot of I know we'll get into this more when we talk about the Paycheck Protection Plan. But it looks like now there may be issues with some banks or all of them even starting that tomorrow because there's concerns about Treasury guidelines that haven't been put out yet. So things are changing on this, and we are trying to study it and keep up with it as fast as we can. We're trying to give you the most up-to-date information that we have right now.
And to that end, I've just put in the chat, so if you're on and attending this webinar, I'll put this in. We're also going to record. I am recording this. We're going to put this on YouTube. We'll get this out as well with the links to the disaster loan application, and we're going to talk about that next. And then the payroll protection plan application link where you can download that. We'll talk about that after. So let's jump now into that disaster loan application, which actually both you and I have completed so that we would understand that process. And what tips or tidbits can you give us on the disaster loan application?
So part of the thing I have been advising my clients and that to do is to one, it's a fairly simple process. You need some really basic information. EIN of your business, what the name of it is.
What do you think about doing a quick, I can share a screen with that on there. What do you want to run through that real quick?
Yeah, but
Let's give that a shot.
But I would suggest everybody, even if you're considering the Paycheck Protection Plan, definitely start out with the Small Business Administration, because it's a $10,000 loan that can be rolled over into part of the and refinance as part of the Paycheck Protection Plan, and ultimately, if you meet all the qualifications, can ultimately be rolled in as part of the grant money and forgiven. But it's a much faster way to at least get some short-term, quick cash into a business's hands so that they can continue doing what they need to do.
Okay, so you can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay, so here's our website, covid19relief.sba.gov, with a little / hashtag, another /. You can also do an SBA Disaster Loan Google search, and you'll be able to find this pretty quick. So you tell me what you'd like me to do with this, and we'll go ahead and do it.
I think the easiest thing is probably just filling it out as we did. There's a couple of different options. I think the majority of anyone that's applying for this are going to be in the first two categories. You are either going to be an applicant business with no more than 500 employees, or you are going to be an individual either operates under a sole proprietorship with or without employees, or as an independent contractor. We'll point out some things about sole proprietorship, independent contractor, and self-employed as we get into the Paycheck Protection Plan, because there seems to be some conflicting positions on that. So, and then the second part is just going down and answering the questions of the checklist, which are pretty straightforward and self-explanatory.
We're not going to get it if we're doing illegal activities.
Correct.
That's that. I don't know why we have to check that, but we.
I think the only thing you can guarantee out of doing illegal activities is you will still be subject to income taxes on net ill-gotten gain.
Right.
One of the code sections, but the rest is just, it's all pretty straightforward kind of stuff in industries and things that that would exclude you from applying for this. And then we come to this screen, and your business legal name is whatever you have formed under. So as an example, in my case, my entity legal name is Hammock Inc. and my trade name is Independent Accounting Office. In Al's case, it's TruPayroll LLC, and operating as TruPayroll. And then you go in and put your EIN number, what type of entity that you are. If you're uncertain, either refer to your tax return from last year or contact your tax preparer. I believe, I don't know, Al, you can correct me if I'm wrong in this, I think non-for-profits are allowed to apply for this as well.
They certainly are. Yep.
Okay. And then those questions are pretty dang. This is the one where you will
wishful thinking on my part, but I just put it in there.
Yeah, whatever your gross revenues are. And Al, are you reading that as, are you doing it as a 12-month going January 1 to January 31st?
I'm actually not. I'm reading that because they put a January 31st date. I'm assuming that's a February 1 to January 31st date. 12 months prior to the date of the disaster. So yeah, I'm using that as a fiscal.
I know we've seen some things where it looks like they're using 13 months in that, but I just wanted to point that out. People may be confused by that. So our interpretation of this is when if you're running QuickBooks or some financial program, use 2/1 of 19 to 1/31 of 20. If you have cost of goods sold, put those in. If you don't, then it's just going to be other expenses. Again, for rental properties, if you've lost rent, how much you've lost. Not-for-profits, your operational costs, which would be in your financials for that. Faith-based, I'm not exactly.
So that's going to be religious organizations that aren't going to necessarily have a 990, I think. So because they don't have to file.
Yeah. So if you're a nonprofit organization that's under $50,000 in revenues and expenses, then you do not have a tax return filing. So just provide them with whatever your rough numbers are in costs and expenses.
So I'm assuming what they're talking about here is insurance. So if you have business interruption.
Yeah, that was my interpretation of it. Any other compensation that you may have gotten since programs became available that would be directly related to the coronavirus. And then the rest is where your business is, all your contact information.
Okay, we're just going to go ahead and do all that so we can just get to the next screen. All right. And does anyone have any questions while I'm doing this as well? You can put those in the chat so that we can get to you and get some more specific.
On your business date established, if you're a formed entity or an LLC or something, if you're not exactly certain, you can go to the sunbiz.org if you're a Florida entity, and that will give you your formation date. And unless you bought the business from somebody else, your ownership date is probably going to be roughly around the same time or whatever time you took over if you acquired somebody else's entity.
So this one's an interesting one. This is a drop-down field, and you're going to pick what you're doing. And then the second one is also another one. So obviously, if you're not seeing it in there, what I was surprised about is they're not actually asking for additional information beyond. So payroll services.
For mine, sorry, my industry, I went under finance. If you just want to click that real quick, you see it's got a different set of pull downs for, whatever you just basically try to pick something that's as close as you can find to your industry.
Yep. And so this one's fairly
straightforward. Yep.
So here was an interesting one too. So if you have a partnership or some other thing that you are in, one of the owners is a business entity, you're going to need to select that as well and add that in. So I'm not going to bother filling all that because obviously it's going to ask for socials and all that kind of stuff. I don't want anybody to know my date of birth. I try to keep that. White hair gives it away. I'm old.
29 was a good year.
And so that's pretty much it. Once you fill this part out, and you hit next.
I think the next page is I'm trying to remember what was on the.
I don't really think there was much, as I remember. There wasn't really much on there. And then it just summarized it, and you hit submit, and you got a application number, and then they're going to let us know in about what time frame?
I think it's 3 days. It's my last one.
Mr. King thinks that, yeah, Sean, we're in the webinar. I'm not answering your phone call. So some service providers could absolutely have cost of goods sold if you have what the service that you're providing could certainly have direct costs associated with the scope of work that you provide. So that's Sean King there, Jim, giving us, harassing us.
I figured.
So he's asking marketing, labor. So labor certainly would be in a service business. Your labor would definitely be a direct cost. I don't know if that's going to affect the loan value. Any idea, Jim?
No, this is, I think this is an all or nothing kind of grant. I see where it was.
Well, it's only $10,000. That's the max of this one's going to be.
Yeah, for this one. So.
Okay.
I'm just trying to look real quick to see if we've got.
Does anybody have any, David, what if you change from a sole prop to an incorporated? Kathleen, that's actually a great question. And because the length of my business was significant enough in the past, I just use that one because it's easy to find also on Sunbiz. For your specific case, and Sean, no, expenses aren't the same as cost of goods sold. I would go with the sole prop date as your beginning because the structure change doesn't change when you actually began your business. Would you agree with that, Jim?
Yeah, but I think in her specific case too, they've got I think both entities have been formed into S corps for at least one tax year.
Okay, so let's answer Freddie's question. Is there an interest rate on this loan?
Yes, I believe it's 4%.
4%. Yeah, that's what I've read as well. Okay, awesome. Anything else before we leave this? This is the disaster loan. So that's a max $10,000 loan. So you're not, Sean, that's a good question. And the question is, how do we list out our expenses? So I'm going to go back here. As you can see, you don't. You're just listing your cost of goods. And here,
there's a box somewhere too that I believe you list what your net income.
No, there.
That may be on the additional page. Then Al, there was something where.
I didn't see that in mine. There was this one that I thought it was going to be, and then I read, oh wait, that's faith-based. So the only two things that I saw financial were the gross revenues and the cost of goods. There was nothing that I
think it's on the additional information. I'm almost positive there was. I could be.
I'll tell you what. Let's move on from this, and we'll go.
Yeah, we can definitely find out. And
I'll go fill this in off screen here, and we'll deal with the. I'm going to stop the screen share for a minute.
Okay.
Go back here, and so that's. We'll jump back to the disaster loan in a minute, but let's jump forward. And Mike B, we have not gotten in the payroll protection program loan and the grant yet, so we're going to jump into that right now. So if you've applied for and you received the disaster loan, Jim, that can be then refinanced with the payroll protection program loan, correct?
Correct.
And so talk to us about the payroll protection program loan. How do you see that working, functioning, and what do people need to do?
So, as we've been telling everybody, at least everybody, my clients, your clients, our mutual clients, this all starts with your local banks. So obviously, while it's a $349 billion pool of money in the scope of the number of small businesses out there, a number of businesses across the country that are effective. This is not going to take a whole lot of time. We've also heard from people in reliable sources that they expect the money to be depleted fairly quickly in a matter of days once they actually get up and open. Again, there was a question I have not followed up earlier today. There was reports that banks were not ready to go because they didn't have enough clarification or direction from the Treasury Department on guidelines on loans, on the forgiveness part and the granting part of it. One of the issues Al and I had just discussed the other day was what happens if you're the person that files the loan and you get approved for your money and you're the $349 billion in $1 loan that is now outside of the government's backstop to guarantee this loan and turn it into a grant. Are you liable? Can the bank not forgive it? Does it become a loan, even if you've done everything in the criteria of doing it? My gut tells me, I am not a lawyer, unlike Sean King, and I don't pretend to play one on TV or here, but just in other programs like this that we've seen, I think there's going to be a lot of this that's going to be fraught with litigation. So I believe the banks are trying to make sure that the Treasury Department gives them basically immunity from having to cover these loans if everybody does all the right things under the guidelines of it and applied and got the loan, and all of a sudden there's not the money there for the federal government or the backing to turn that into a grant. But at any rate, the process starts with your local bank. Various banks are in various positions. Locally here, and not singling out banks or giving preference to one or another. This is just from what we have heard. First Integrity seems to be well on their game and seems to have a pretty smooth and fluid process from clients that we've talked to about dealing with the local branch manager here and other branch managers up in Naples. They seem to have gotten ahead of the curve. My understanding from another client, Centennial, is it doesn't even have forms, or they didn't as of yesterday. Have some people checking in. Wells Fargo has just issued a packet, I know, from a client that I saw about 20 minutes ago on their guidelines for it.
Yep.
I think Bank of America is probably on the ball. I would suggest Chase and that is probably on the ball, but you want to contact your local banks and get their packages and get in and start the process, even going through and Googling online the checklist and the things and the documents that you're going to need, because there's a fair amount of documentation that you're either going to have to get from your books, information that you're going to have to get from your payroll records, or depending on who your payroll provider is, the reports for those. I believe there is a requirement for personal financial statements, which are, you can Google or go to Excel, and those are fairly easy to create. Your basic assets and liabilities, pretty straightforward thing. It's definitely something we can assist in guiding you in a direction to get a format. Some of the other requirements are business plan things, and that are not required. There's specific exemptions from specifically coronavirus related type loans that you would otherwise normally have to provide. And as Al said, that one, if you do ultimately apply for that and you are awarded money and you've already gotten the SBA loan, you can refinance the SBA loan, thereby taking some of the proceeds from the payroll protection plan loan, paying off the SBA loan, and using the SBA loan funds to pay things in accordance with the payroll protection plan, and then ultimately qualify to, apply to have that turned into a grant. And that is an application process as well. It is not a foregone conclusion that you get going from a loan to a grant. It is something you have to apply for, and the banks do have to make a determination within 60 days once you apply for that.
And there is no real process right now for what that's going to look like, is there?
No, I have not seen anything. I've not even seen basic outlines as to what that application process will look like. My guess is, I believe doing this, we're using a period through June 30th. So my guess is that the banks are going to try and get out the money and the loans to people, and then probably await some further clarification as to time periods and how long the Treasury Department wants to utilize things. And again, this all assumes that there's no extensions to this. There's no fourth round of funding. If this goes on longer than anticipated, there could be extensions to this. There could be expansions to it. It's sort of, everybody is, I guess the banks are in the same position you and I are, trying to understand it as they go and moving along as fast as they can with the best information that's up to date. That's not to say tomorrow morning everything that we told you today could be out the window, or portions of it out the window. So I both are reiterating to people, this is not the end all be all and the last thing. Everything that we tell you is potentially subject to change as the Treasury Department releases further rules, clarifications, and guidelines.
And totally reminiscent of the entire BP process.
Yes.
Down here in Florida, and you were part of the whole BP claims process. There's going to be several iterations, I'm sure, of what the process is going to look like. So with that in mind, let's jump back real quick to the disaster loan. I got to that other page. I'm going to share the screen again. So here's the additional information page. So I've gone through the business owner. So convicted of a crime. Okay. No, I'm only kidding. I'm debarred from contracting with the government. So no, I don't even do any governmental contracting. Indicted. Oh, shoot. Nope, not on that one either. And then it's just if you've got somebody helping you. So Jim, you're not really helping with this, and I know that I'm really not either. I'm right. Are you helping people fill this particular one out?
I have helped a couple, but no, I mean, nothing where to the point. The ones that I've helped, there hasn't been a charge. It was more just to get an idea how the process works.
If there are those of you that are watching this live or the recording, if you paid somebody to help you complete this, then you need to fill that out. And then
I'm going to just, I'm looking, this is for Sean King. Sean, I would say do the SBA loan because you're going to get results for that much faster. If you're going to do plan to do the payroll protection plan, you might as well do the SBA loan. You will get that faster, and then you can always roll it in and pay that off. And I think he's saying that, okay, so Sean and King is saying that Fifth Third just told him that things would be available online tomorrow. So it seems to be some of the bigger, larger banks are getting this done faster.
Well, and then that also goes into what we were talking about yesterday as a result of the who is actually eligible for tomorrow, the 3rd versus the 10th.
So this is kind of a, I'm almost perplexed. I had this conversation with a financial advisor about 25 minutes ago as well, just a friend of a client of mine. So not that I'm the end all be all, but I consider myself to be pretty learned on stuff, and this one I don't understand. So tomorrow, if you are a small business under the guidelines of applying for the payroll protection plan, if you have 500 employees or less, or you are a sole proprietor, which means you have a business, you do something, and you file on a Schedule C of your 1040 tax return, whether you do or don't have employees, you are eligible to file for all of this tomorrow, assuming your bank is a thing. But if everything goes to plan, you are able to do this for tomorrow. If you happen to be an independent contractor, and basically what that means is if you do work for somebody and they give you a 1099, or you are self-employed and you go out and do work, and you do work for people, but you're not going over the $600 mark that requires them to issue you a 1099, but you are recording all your income and expenses on a Schedule C. That is basically the definition of a self-employed person. Either way, both of those types of independent contractors or self-employed people are filing on Schedule C. If you are a Schedule C filer and you're an independent contractor and you get a 1099, you file all your income and all your expenses on a Schedule C, and by the sheer nature and the IRS code section, that makes you, if you are operating under your Social Security number, that makes you a sole proprietorship. If you are an LLC, but you are a single member LLC, for tax purposes, the IRS disregards that and has you file everything instead of a 1065 partnership return. They have you file on a Schedule C of your 1040, which makes you a sole proprietor. So my professional opinion here is, if you are an independent contractor or you are self-employed and you are filing on a Schedule C, file tomorrow as a sole proprietor, because unless you are reporting your income in some other tax form that I have yet to hear about, or that maybe there's a something 40 that I don't know about, and that every other practitioner or every other person that does this that I've talked to doesn't know about. If you Google self-employment versus sole proprietorship, it will basically come out to tell you that anybody that is self-employed is a sole proprietorship. So I would say file tomorrow. The worst that can happen is they reject you. I would mark the box that you are a sole proprietor. I would not mark the box that you are an independent contractor or that you are self-employed, because you are reporting your income. If you are doing it correctly or somebody's doing it for you, you're reporting on a Schedule C, thus making you a sole proprietorship, thus making you eligible to apply tomorrow. That's my opinion on it, both personally and professionally. I don't know, I'm judging by Al's head nodding that he is pretty much in agreement with me, and somebody that did the same thing that I'm doing, did it for 25 years, so it's not. And
it's a strange way they broke that out. There's no doubt about it.
And yeah, it is. There's a lot of this. You can definitely tell in all of these packages and all these bills, phase 1, 2, and 3, and I'm sure whatever's to come. They are basically throwing everything but the kitchen sink at this. And when you do that, you tend to write a whole lot of stuff. I go back to writing a term paper in college. You write a whole bunch of stuff in the first draft, and then by the time you go back and reread it, you got to make sense out of what you actually put in there and make it work. That, I think, is what this is going to be.
Right.
I also will say this, reverting back to the BP stuff, sooner is better. Kind of like the BP, the faster and the earlier you got your stuff in, the more likely you were to get something. The longer you waited, the more likely you were to be caught up in the litigation changes, afterthoughts, coming to Jesus moments, whatever people have on this, when they realize that what the intent was and what the reality are doing are two different things.
So let's look at the couple of questions, Sean. So asking, so the 10,000 loan has to be repaid, right? And the short answer to that is yes. However, it could be a no if you're able to refinance it through the payroll protection plan loan, correct?
Correct.
And only to that portion which you can get the relief from when the grant application process becomes available. We'll be able to talk a little bit more about that whenever
So
that's.
in your case, Sean, basically, it really kind of comes down to this. For $10,000 of expenses that you have, you can either use your money or you can use OPM, other people's money, to pay those. If you are, if you're fortunate enough to be cash flush and don't need it, and don't want to, I don't see what the point of not applying for it is, because you may be applying for a payroll protection, which could potentially take longer than you anticipated.
Right.
And when you didn't think you needed that $10,000, you may ultimately need it. Sean King's pretty good at what he does, so he may not need that 10,000.
Right.
But those horses don't eat for free. So that's my suggestion to Sean.
Yeah, and he said the payroll plan is not to be repaid. So let's caveat that it is to be repaid. It's going to have to be repaid if you don't apply for the conversion to a grant.
So yeah, I think that's
qualified for the grant.
I think it's a two-piece caveat. One, in order to have it treated as a grant and be forgiven, you actually have to apply for it.
Right.
So if you don't apply for it, you obviously won't get it. And the second caveat is you will, and this is where yesterday when we did this, we said the same thing. I can't emphasize enough that you want to keep as detailed records as possible of exactly where you spent that money that you get from the payroll protection plan on, because you are going to have to prove, but whether it be mortgage payments, lease payments, utility payments, those type of things, payroll, that you actually utilize that money for those things in order for it to be forgiven. So if you're fortunate enough to be somebody that has a combination where, yes, you'll get the payroll protection plan, but you also have some money squirreled away for other things, use the payroll protection plan money for exactly what it is called for. And one of the things I will put out there, and I think it's going to go for employers and employees, where you're going to, this is one of the things of unintended consequences. If Al is an employer and I work for him and he applies for this payroll protection plan, and I am very unhappy with the menial pay that Al Wagner gives me, because he's only giving me $300.
Good pay.
$300 a week. I can apply for unemployment and get, as our understanding of the reading is you are entitled to be able to get the amount that the state would give you up to their maximum amount, plus $600 subsidized by the federal government. So I think it's $300 to $350 a week. I don't know if you know that number, Al, but what the maximum is for Florida unemployment. But essentially, you're looking somewhere between $900 and $1,000 a week, and I believe that duration is for 13 weeks.
$275 a week from Florida.
Okay, so it's $875 then, if you're getting the full amount. If you're somebody that's making less than that, there's probably more of an incentive to utilize unemployment. The other side of that is then, as the employer, you may have to let that employee go, because right now there's not a mechanism that, at least as far as my reading and understanding, that Al can force me back onto the payroll. He would end up having to notify unemployment, yes, I've gotten this loan. I offered to pay Jim. Jim would rather be a deadbeat and collect his unemployment because it's twice as much, in Al's case, 3 times as much as he would be paying somebody. But there are going to be those issues. But in order, if you do not have the same payroll as you were paying before this, you could theoretically be forced to have to pay back some of that payroll protection plan. So there's nothing in here that says you have to have the same employees. You just have to have the same payroll amount. So I am sure you could find somebody that would be willing to, that didn't have a job before all this started, putting them on your payroll with the possibility of guaranteeing them work when things come back on, and your deadbeat that wants to collect unemployment will have short-term happiness for long-term pain when the money runs out or things phase and we go back to normal, and that person now, he or she, doesn't have a job. That is just one of the things to think about as on the employer side, right? And I completely get it from the employee side. If you have an opportunity to make more money than you're making on your job, why wouldn't you do it? I think this is one of the unintended consequences of the bill rushed through. In fact, I think it was one of the things that was argued in the process of it. But for the employer, you want to make sure you are meeting all your payroll requirement numbers. And it has nothing to do with the number of employees that you had before or after. It is a totality dollar amount for that. Theoretically, your rents and other things would be taken care of. I'm not exactly sure how it would work. I believe on the rent forbearance, all that is going to be work kind of like mortgage payments, and I think that is just going to be, it's going to be added on the back end. So if you get the loan and you can make your payments, then you should probably go ahead and make them so that you are spending the money in the appropriate way, so that there is no, because I think when this is all said and done, and this is only my personal opinion, I think they're going to be looking for ways to prevent the granting of taking the loans and making them grants. And if there's a way to get out of it where somebody else can pick up the tab, then there it's going to be. And again, on the things of unemployment, the expansion to independent contractors and those type of people. So if you were an Uber driver or somebody, Lyft driver, you never paid into unemployment. The company that you work for has never paid into unemployment, yet you're eligible to collect for it. I think part of this, you're going to see substantial changes to the way these programs work. And I think there'll be a clamp down by both parties once the price tag of this comes out to what it's going to be whenever it's ultimately finally resolved.
So let's go back. We've got a question on if you're an LLC but filing as an S Corp when we're doing these things. As to when that was about the time we were talking about when to file. Again, I think the answer to that is really going to be file it ASAP and let SBA and or the bank tell you that they're not going to put you in until.
Yeah, so whoever you're going to do it with, as far as filing, obviously whoever you do either business or personal banking with, that's where you're going to want to start. You do not have to use a bank that you bank with and are using. There's other banks that are available to do that. Obviously, my guess would be is that they are going to get preferential treatment to their customers or clients. So if you're going to a different bank that may have more favorable things, you may want to go and open an account there and do something. But even that at this point may be late. So that it's go with who you have the best relationships with as far as who you bank with for your particular business needs. For Suzanne Seekins and your question, if you shut down or are shut down because of this, they would qualify for unemployment. If they quit, my guess is the traditional rules are going to apply, and they're not going to be
eligible,
able and eligible to collect on that. So I think there's going to be a lot of follow-up reporting. One of the things I will, just my own personal thought in both, I think Al could probably agree with this in just both of our dealings with government entities. I suspect that there is going to be a lot of clawback that will go on when this is over. I would not be surprised if state unemployment agencies reach out to employers to find out if they were open, if they got the payroll protection plan in place, got the loans and were paying people. If they offered people that were on unemployment, if they had offered them their job and their money and offered to pay them, I could see unemployment coming back and saying it's fraud. The other issue is going to be there's no clear, at least as far as I found at this point, there's no clear understanding as to how people on unemployment, how that is going to affect the company's unemployment rate, because your rate is based on number of claims you've had, duration, that type of thing. And Al can speak to that in greater detail than I usually, just does more with it. But I believe your maximum rate can be 5.4%.
Yep.
Not mistaken, Al. So
Florida.
You're somebody in Florida. Yeah, each state is different to its rates, and each state is different to their payouts. But in Florida, it's 5.4%. So if you're somebody that has not had claims or anything, and you have a 0.010 rate, and all of a sudden your rate goes up to 5.4%, and you have a substantial payroll, just on a $100,000 payroll, that could be an extra $5,000 in taxes to the business. So my gut tells me that right now it's throw the kitchen sink and get everybody money so they can do stuff, and then figure out how and who we claw back and who gets punished and who abused the system after the fact. So just something to keep in mind for people that are collecting unemployment. If your employer offers you the job as part of the payroll protection plan, I don't know if there's going to be a reporting requirement on the employer's end to notify who was on the payroll and who didn't accept it.
I agree with you. I think there's going to be a whole lot of opportunity for agency audits and reasons.
I think Sean King's going to have a new commercial, or at least a new segment. Have you been abused by coronavirus? I think is going to be one of his things, because I just think there's going to be a lot of litigation that comes with
188, Sean King. Hold
yes.
that finger straight up. Okay, we know, Sean. We got it. So the question going back up, how do you do the breakdown of what you're paying, either employees' rent or utilities? I don't think there's any clear guidance on that, and I think it's just going to be and Jim, you can chime in too, it's on an aggregate accumulative basis. So as long as you've paid employees' rent and utilities in the time period of this particular crisis, then
yeah. So there's
to it.
I think we were talking about this earlier too. There appears to be a couple different formulas in timeframes and duration for calculating your payroll. Initially, it looked like it was on an annualized basis, taking a 12-month period, coming up with what your average monthly payroll was, timesing it by 2.5. If you're somebody that has seasonal employees, and that is a specific industry set. So it is not somebody that, in our case here, that updates it's specific season. You work a specific period of time.
Like citrus growers, perhaps.
Yeah, usually I think the average window, I think it's 3 to 4 months is what they utilize that.
Right.
But so if you ramp your employees during season like we do down here, you are not considered a seasonal employee because you're employing people all year round. It is going to be industry specific seasonal.
But you will get the averaging of that.
You'll get the averaging, yeah. So, but for most people, it's going to be, today I think we experienced it and saw a couple different formulas. So the time periods may be changing it.
The most common
comparison period, I think the comparison period for loan forgiveness is probably going to be one of the two. What were you paying before, or utilizing the same period as last year? So if you were doing April 1st to June 30th, I think somewhere there's going to be a comparison April 1st to June 30th of last year, or in looking at January 1st to March 31st, what was your payroll like, and to those type of things. So they're ensuring that you are paying accurately and for basically what position you were in before the coronavirus affected.
So going back to a couple other questions, this was Sean's, do you borrow 1 month or 2 months? And I can't see on the SBA application form where you're actually asking for an amount of a loan other than the calculation of the 2.5 times the average monthly payroll. That will be the loan amount. Any thoughts on that, Jim?
That's my understanding too. Yeah, you're going to borrow, and it is they're going to figure it out, and figuring that 2.5 times your payroll is going to be enough to cover payroll and rents and those type of things. I'm just
That
looking
will be
on
the
here.
loan amount. It's not like you figure it out to be 55,000 and
Yeah, so if this goes longer than June 30th, my guess is you will either have to apply for another loan, and that will be a new package, or they will pass a phase 4, and that will somehow, the rules have yet to be decided. I did notice on here, Christina said if you, Chase requires you to have had a business account since April 15th. So I don't know how that would affect sole proprietors, self-employed people that may not have a business account, that may exclude you from using that particular bank.
From that bank,
so,
right.
Thanks for that, Christina. That's one of the things you'll want to ask your bank. What are the requirements of business type accounts in that to be able to get a loan from them. I don't know if that is industry required or bank specific, but at least, if you're banking at Chase and you don't have a business account, I don't know if they're going to make an exception for if you can show that a personal account was used exclusively for business. My guess is probably not, and then you may need to go outside the realm there. So
let's go up to Christina. Christina had another question about what if employees have filed for unemployment before you've had an opportunity to even file for the loan, the payroll protection loan. So nobody's been able to file for that at this point. Of course, it doesn't open until tomorrow. It's an interesting dilemma, I think, that could potentially present itself, where a business, if you're shut down, you're shut down, and you're not really paying payroll moving forward. It doesn't necessarily going to preclude somebody from still getting that loan. That comes into whether or not it's going to actually be forgiven or turned and converted into a grant.
Yeah, and I guess the thing on that, Christina, so for your business, I believe it's at, and you might be able to confirm this when I was talking to Jess, I believe salons, is it as a midnight tonight or
Midnight
are
tonight.
mandated to shut down. So I don't know how they'll treat, if you were shut down prior to that, the employee probably could theoretically have the right to get whatever the state of Florida, I think it was, Al said 275, 285. I think any of the additional benefits are going to start as of tomorrow. So that additional 600 to max out, my guess is that will correspond with the applying for the paid protection things. And then the other issue is, I get more of a dilemma, I guess, for until the loan is actually approved. Should an employee at least get their paperwork in for unemployment, because there's potentially not necessarily guaranteeing that that you're going to get the loan. It is you're still going to have to, based on the documents that they're requesting, I think you're still going to have to meet some kind of criteria that can prove that you were a going concern, because we're using accounting terms, and basically the ability to run your business, fund your business, and be profitable, and have the potential to go back to that. So I don't want to give anybody the impression that this Paycheck Protection Plan is a guaranteed loan. It is not. You are applying for a loan just like anything else. I think there are going to be some greater exceptions. But my guess is if you turn in financials and you look like you were having problems before this was going to go on, I don't think the banks are required to approve that loan. Under my reading of it, it is not a guaranteed thing to happen. So in that aspect, I would say for employees, you should probably start the process of the unemployment process. And my understanding is the website has been horrific here in Florida, trying to get on it, and people getting kicked off and having to restart and all that. So I would say from the employer and the employee approach, you take the same approach that the government has taken with money to this. Go after as many different avenues as you can, because if you get them all, you don't have to take them all. So if you get the SBA loan, and they, you know, when you set up through the process that Al and I were showing you earlier, you know, you give them an account and routing number, and so it looks like if you qualify for it, they will direct deposit it into your bank account. There's nothing that precludes you from sending that money right back and paying off the loan. There's no prepayment penalty or anything like that. So I think in this case, more is better because we are in such uncharted territory. You know, for employees, go ahead and apply for it. If you can get on through the system. For employers, apply for as many as you can because there's no guarantee for that. Christine, to answer your question, you will apply as an LLC. So even though there's a transition this year that's happening for your specific thing, all that is for tax purposes how the IRS treats you. So if somebody's asking you what your entity structure is, you are an LLC.
Okay. So one of the questions, what about restaurants, as we have more employees during season? And that goes back to why I believe they're doing the averaging. So that will be accounted for when you actually look at your averaging.
Yeah, Wania, you don't think you will, that's not considered seasonal employment.
Yeah.
You just have a period of time where you go, but as Al said, that increase in employees will be reflected in your overall payroll numbers.
Okay, I think, so what I wanted to look at really quick.
I'm going to scroll back through here, Al, just to make sure we didn't miss
And I'm going to share my screen again, Jim.
Okay.
Just so everybody can see, this is the Paycheck Protection Plan application that you can get right off the SBA website. And again, that website is here. Let me scroll that right over. If you Google Paycheck Protection Plan application form, you're going to get, the top link is actually going to be the download direct. The second link, at least how it presented to me, it'll get you to this website so that you can actually read, I guess, a little bit. Well, there's actually nothing else on it other than that. So either way, it's this PDF right here. Not overly complicated of an initial form to fill out, but as Jim did say, you're going to have to go through the approval process that your bank is going to make you subject to, because the SBA is essentially a guarantor on the loan. And while you may qualify at some later point for the conversion to a grant, they are still going to go through this process of approving you. So there's no guarantee that you get those funds.
Yeah, and I don't know, because I briefly saw that one this morning with one of our clients on that particular form. I don't know if you're still going to have additional forms from your particular bank as well in their loan application process.
I imagine you will.
That would be my guess.
That's gotten that far, so we can't even answer that directly. But I would agree with you that
one of the other things I'll just say to people that are listening, just that we've gotten feedback from people. A lot of your local branches are closed or by appointment only. So you're going to want to call and try to get ahead of the curve on this, because there's millions of people that are going to be doing the exact same thing that you are doing. And unfortunately, there's not millions of people that are going to be in these bank branches that are going to be able to handle this. So they are going to be inundated as well. And the other thing I will, just for my own, I don't want to speak for El on this, but my guess is he'll probably agree with me on this. We can answer questions in generalities of things to our specific trade. Al has done videos on that of pointing people in the directions of what reports they're going to need based on what we've read from the payroll system. For my clients, for tax clients in that, and our mutual bookkeeping clients, and that we can get certain financials. As far as particular bank loan forms, while we know the generalities of it, we do not have a memorization or understanding of every single bank's requirements for their specific type of loans. We are going through and we are trying to get as firm of an understanding on the government forms that they're putting out for this process. But if somebody calls and says, hey, Chase is asking me this particular question on their mortgage form, chances are I am going to have a really, really general, generic answer for you and not have intimate knowledge of those particular forms. On a personal note, I will just request, you know, if you call and ask for information, we are happy to help and provide to the extent that we can. But understand we are still both running operations. Al still has payroll clients that are running payrolls and doing their business. He still has bookkeeping clients that are doing stuff. I still have hundreds of tax clients that are trying to get their tax returns in to either qualify for the $1,200 or if they've got refunds coming. Yelling at, I'll speak for me on this, yelling at me and swearing, I can assure you, is not going to get you the result that you think it's going to get you. And you know, Al and I are guys that run all aspects of our business. I don't have a support staff here that is answering phones and doing things. That's part of the model of my business. When you call, you get me, and when you call Al, you get to deal with us and get directly to us. The downside of that is you're not necessarily going to get us when you call right away. For my own thing, texting me and emailing are much better ways and avenues to get them. You know, my office line, 239-791-7796, takes both phone calls and texts. You will get a much quicker response from me by texting me or emailing me with your questions or what you have. That way I can at least do a little looking around or homework and respond back to you in the fastest way possible. But we are working through things as fast as we can, and as keeping up with it as much as we can as things change on the fly.
So listen, Jim, Suzanne's ready to come beat somebody for you, so she wants to know who's yelling. Real quick, while we're getting
Suzanne got my back. I'm going to need some chiropractic care of those, Suzanne, because I've been sitting in this chair a long time. My neck and my back, I got kinks. I need help. I need it bad.
I'm going to share my screen again real quick and take just a couple minutes to help people understand where you can go if you're a TruPayroll customer to get the reporting that you need. So this is our sample company. I'm not divulging anybody's information. When you're on your to-do screen, once you log in, and if you need help getting logged in, shoot me a text message or an email, and we'll be able to help you with that. You're going to go over to the reports section, and this is going to be the report to utilize right here, your payroll details report. And you're going to change. So the most common that we've seen so far is the annualized period from Feb 1st of last year to the end of January. And you're just going to summarize that by employee. Make sure you're clicking this off, hit update, and because this one doesn't have anybody paid yet. So 1 second, there we go. We'll pay her 25 hours. Okay, there we go. And we'll approve that. And so then we'll come back. Okay, now that we've got that done, again, reports, payroll details. Well, in fact, this is only this period. So change your period to what you need. And if your bank wants a different, I've also seen 215 to 630. So it would be of 19. I'm just going to use 2020 for the example here, but this is the other period that I've seen, 215 to 630. Again, that would be from 19 because it's going to be comparative. You're going to update that. What it's going to do, instead of giving you an entire list of paychecks for each employee, it's just going to give you one line item for each employee, and then your bottom number down here is what you're going to end up putting in here. I'm sorry, you're going to take that bottom number in that period, divide it by the length of period, so 12 months or 4.5 months or whatever length of time that'll be. Divide it out, you'll get your average here, and then that's just simple math, 2.5 times. The other area that you're going to need to go to is your taxes and forms. So when you click on taxes and forms, you're going both quarterly and annually. However, don't click here. Go to your right, click on the View Archive Forms, and you'll see your quarters. Now, this is just a sample, of course, so you'll be able to see all of 19 for as long as you've been a customer of ours. Those will be there. And then your annual forms. This one doesn't have any. Again, it's a sample company, but your 940s will show up under the annual category or the quarterly category for your state unemployment returns, and the 941s. I got the question asked earlier. I'm going to stop the share. What's a 944? If you're a TruPayroll customer, we don't have any 944 customers. That's an annual filing instead of a quarterly filing. That's all the difference is. So if you're here and you're a TruPayroll customer, you don't have a 944, you have a 941. So if there's any more questions on that, how to find what you need, shoot me a message, put it on here, whatever. But otherwise, that's what we can do to help provide.
And I'll just put out there too. So in the interest of full disclosure, while Elle and I look like we're in different places, we're about 12.5 feet from each other. So if there are any, his payroll clients or mutual clients of mine, if you're having a problem getting in touch with Elle, I am pretty familiar with the payroll system and that, and for most of our mutual clients, I have access to your stuff. So if Elle can't get to something or is inundated, and that, I'm more than happy to help and point you in the direction of what it is. And I have some pretty good polls, so I can get a response or an answer out of Elle pretty quick. So it's all part of the awesomeness of me.
So we have a really great question that just got posted. However, I want to let the world know, because they're all going to see this. I got me a B for a little bit. Love it.
So, and by the way, for my clients, if you can't get a hold of me, Al is more than willing to take on calls or answer anything. So feel free to.
I think I've been doing that.
We're both trying to support each other in times of our being inundated with things. So reach out to either one of us, and we'll at least get the message to the other.
Yeah, let's deal with Kathleen's question. If an employee earns over 100,000, they're not excluded. Their income is capped at 100,000. So if somebody's making 150, you're not putting down 150 for them. You're going to exclude the $50,000 over the 100.
Correct. And the other, just as a side to that, and it hasn't been decided, or at least I don't think the rules have come out. So Kathleen, if you have somebody that's making over $100,000, and you're going to continue to pay them, it's unclear if you use any of the proceeds from the payroll protection plan to pay over that cap, if that amount will be forgiven or if that will be considered a loan. So at this point, till we get some clarification, we've sort of been, I don't know how many people are actually going to run into that issue, but if it is, if you were planning on paying people anyway and had money set aside, I would use the payroll protection plan proceeds to the exact guidelines that they are for. So if you're paying somebody, and again, that $100,000 is going to be broken down over the period in question. So it's not paying them to $100,000 with proceeds. It's what's that annualized and then paid prorated in the allotted time. So if you go over that, I would pay them with money outside of that or do it separately, clearly delineating, so that if you need to show you are not using payroll money for highly compensated people that they could potentially exclude from being treated as a grant.
And to that point, this is where the control freak part of me will come out a little bit. If you can and you don't mind doing this, I would definitely take any of the proceeds of this money and potentially put it into an account that is just going to handle the expenses, and that you can create cross references to the amount of money that you might transfer out of, say, that special account that you would create for this. So you get $10,000 in, put it into that account, and as you transfer it out to write checks off of or whatnot, that you actually have documentation for each amount of those things. I just detail the heck out of what you do with this, to go right back to Jim's point, so that you, in the event that that you might run into either over $100,000 or if they change these rules in whatever way, or however they promulgate the rules for this.
Yeah, my gut tells me this is going to be a document intensive process to have this loan forgiven, because it is ripe for abuse.
So we have a question from Nick. On the form it says most companies will use 2019, but should we use March 19 to February 20 for average payroll, and do we attach 5 941s? So my gut tells me this one as an answer. Why don't you try all 3 periods? Calendar, then Feb to Jan, and then March to Feb, and use the one that gives you the best results. Thoughts on that, Jim?
Yeah, I'd agree. Gathering the forms, especially through TruPayroll systems, some other systems can be a little more complicated, and good luck. But through TruPayroll, I would pull out the things is if you were up for some period, the first quarter in 20, which is what we've heard a lot of.
Yeah.
A lot of the shutdown things that, they were just having record banner years. Chances are your payroll is going to be up for potentially that period as compared to 19. So I would agree with that. I would pull all 3 and see which one gives you the best number and utilize that one. At the end of the day, you're going to have to submit that to the bank. So if something is not right, they're going to let you know.
Yeah.
I would also suggest that even though you use the one with the highest number, I would include in the loan package whatever period, all of the periods that you use. So whatever you looked at, that way the bank doesn't come back and go, no, you have the wrong period.
Good point.
You're putting all of the periods in. If they want to adjust down for some reason, if for whatever reason, rules or statutes or whatever from the Treasury Department make a change, you've gotten it in. Because obviously everybody that's ever done a loan thing knows as soon as one thing is missing, everything stops and the process is gummed up. So I would calculate on what gives you the best package. It's kind of like anything else, ask for more and you negotiate down. Then it's easier to go down than try to go up with them. So calculate your payroll based on whatever gives you the best thing, but provide all whatever periods you looked at in your submission package so that the bank or whoever's reviewing it has them.
And so we've gone over an hour's time. So I think unless there's any additional questions, I think we've covered that fairly well today. We can always come back on, and I think we probably will next week after we see some results, perhaps, and some rules and regulations actually promulgated, so that we have a better understanding of how all this is going to function for all of you.
Yeah, tomorrow, if these things actually open up, and that tomorrow should give us some idea. There's talk that some additional regulations are going to be issued later tonight by the Treasury Department. So, if there's something specific that you'd like us to address, either email me or email Al, contact us in one way, shape, or form, or if you have specific questions that, be honest, I know we've thrown a lot of material at you, feel free to email one of us and we will, respond back as time allows.
Yeah, definitely email me at jmurray@iooaccounting.com. What was that number? 239-791-7796. Yeah, call me there.
And if you guys go to my website, I'll be sure to post Al's personal cell phone and home address for you, which is where I'll be working remotely, or at least that's what I'm going to tell everybody. Listen, guys, we're going to help you guys out in any way that we can. Like I said, we just ask that you bear with us. I know I can speak for myself. I'm sure Al would agree. I've never seen anything like this in my business career, 25 years. And listen, I get where you guys are coming from. This has not been all my life career. I have had businesses. I know what it's like to have employees. I know what it's like to have all that. I had 589 of them at one time. We know what you're going through, but it is as new to us as it is to you guys. And we would rather have you a little bit mad because we're delayed by giving you the right information than shooting off the cuff and giving you information that is going to delay or hurt you guys in your loans or whatever you're trying to do. And obviously, as we find out new things and learn new things, or as additional packages pass, we will try to do this as much as I told Al, I'm available for as much as both of our schedules will allow. And if it's something where we would have to do something in the evening as opposed to this, whatever, I will try to make myself as available as I can, because I know what all you guys are going through. And I will just kind of close on one thing. If you learn nothing else from this, you have learned that the old adage is true, that there are only two things certain in life: death and taxes. Why? Because there's a worldwide global pandemic, and I am still preparing tax returns. So no matter what, Uncle Sam wants his filings because he's your uncle.
And I think we'll just end on that. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day and evening. And enjoy the stay safe at home order, right?
Exactly.
Midnight.
Thanks,
tonight.
guys.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.